Hey, everybody, welcome. Well, why am I welcoming you? I'm assuming that you were here for the show, right? Wasn't that an amazing evening? You don't need me to hype it up. You've already seen me. You've already bought your ticket, so you don't need me to sell it to you again. But I decided to, when I got the request to come and to moderate this panel, it was a no-brainer. As soon as Brian asked me to, it was a no-brainer because I was fortunate enough to see the show during its first preview week, and I left touched. I left questioning. I left feeling joyous. I left feeling angry at some things. Luckily I had a therapist appointment the next day, so I could do a little bit of that trauma work. It sounds like a joke, but that shit is real. So being able to stand here on this stage and being able to talk to these amazing men, it just does my heart good. So thank you so much for sticking around, and we'll make this as fun and informative as possible. And I'd like to thank the American Theater Wing for trusting us with this. And so on with the show, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot have a play without the words and the vision. Please welcome Keenan Scott II. Number 42. Forrest McClendon. Forrest was the voice of God. Mr. Esau Pritchett. Brian Terrell Clark. DeLon Burnside. Mr. Tristan Mack Wiles. And Luke James. There he is. Gentlemen, please be seated. May the congregation be seated. I'd like to thank y'all for coming out this evening. So I'll give you guys the same speech that I gave you when I saw it. On it wasn't opening night, but your opening preview, I think. Mm-hmm. I was just blown away. The fact that you're talented, that's just, you wouldn't be on Broadway if you weren't. But the fact that you told this story, that you gentlemen were the vessels of this man's words, and those words could then come out into the theater and hit me like it all happened to me personally. Wow. Like I saw myself in each of you. And so, not one of these questions, which were lovingly prepared for me by the way, so thank you so much, PR department. But in watching it, just wondering, because there's a universality in each of these things, was that the intent when you started writing this piece, that to be able to show each of the facets of a black man?
Yes, that was the goal. Initially, I started writing this 15 years ago, while I was still an undergrad in college. And really, when I started studying as an actor, American Theater Lexicon, I didn't see myself represented, or my community. So I wanted to be seen on stage, because at the time, a lot of my black playwrights didn't exist in the form they do today. There wasn't many to study, so there wasn't any contemporary stories for myself when I was reading. So that's why I wanted to create this piece, and early on, all the characters were the same age. I was 19 years old, so that's where my life was at that time, right? I wrote what I knew, and it started off as being parts of myself. And so that's why to this day, there's still a little bit of my DNA in all of these characters. So for me, I wanted to show as much as possible the spectrum of our community. Clearly, I can't be the definitive voice, and there's hundreds of more stories to tell, but I wanted to show as much of a spectrum as possible of our community to show that we are not monoliths. So that was the original goal and the origin of the piece.
Please say we are not monoliths one more time.
We're definitely not monoliths, absolutely. Absolutely. We are complex, we are layered, just like everybody else.
I have that discussion with people. In fact, I had it on the Breakfast Club this morning. We were talking about that.
I watched a little bit of it.
Oh, good. But just to say that you're right, we are not monoliths. And the thing that I found, and that touched me watching all of these different experiences and walks of life that we have, is we have to stop treating each other as monoliths. There is no
Yes, sir.
singular black voice. There is not a true black card that if you don't hold this one thing, then that's it. And so I was just touched by watching the range and eating the stories and touching on all those things. Now, why do you think, because you wrote it 15 years ago, and of course you were developing and growing as a writer, but do you feel that this was the actual time, that the reason that you made it to Broadway right now was that the runway was open? And let's say even 10 years ago, 9 years ago, you wouldn't have been sitting here now.
No, I don't think so. Like our brilliant director, Steve Broadnex III, always says, everything happens in divine order. And I believe that. I'm a spiritual person. I'm led by the Spirit. So I believe if it was an opportunity, or if I was to make it 10 years ago, it wouldn't have been the piece it is today. It needed every year, it needed every moment for this play to be what it is. And it needed for me to grow. Starting, at 19, writing as a undergrad, now being 34, married with a child, I'm a different person. So it took time for me to grow up. I grew up with these characters. So this play needed to come right now when it did, on God's timing.
So the marquee says a new American play for a new Broadway. Do you believe that this is a sign that the great white way is willing to compromise that name a little bit?
I don't know about the compromise under that name, but I do feel like this is a new day. I think this piece, along with others, will start to push the needle in a brighter, more positive direction. And I do feel like this is a new Broadway. It had no choice but to be new. We didn't even know if live theater would return, after the pandemic, or live performances as a whole. So therefore, Broadway had to be new. The audiences had to change. And I think with the return, our audience have diversified more. Our audience have become younger. It's not just a old patron community no more. I think young folk are coming. Every single show I hear, this is my first Broadway show I've ever come to. So I do feel like this piece is definitely pushing the needle for that.
But what's beautiful about this piece is in looking at the landscape of Broadway, and I've been fortunate enough to be here a few times, like over the past 20 years, and to watch slowly but surely things happen. Slowly, but surely. Slowly. That when you have a show that is as bold-faced as Thoughts of a Colored Man, you can't help it. It's not Oklahoma. You know what? It's not that. It's not. Yes, we have Music Man of the Street, yay, Sutton and Hugh. That's awesome, but with works like this, it is tilting and changing things. But when you named it Thoughts of a Colored Man, were there any thoughts that you may be alienating a piece of your audience? Because I had this conversation with a friend of mine who, after I got back to LA, is, oh my God, you gotta see this, Black man, what, I gotta see this show? And he was like, oh, I would absolutely love to go see the show. What's the name of it? I said, it's Thoughts of a Colored Man. He goes, oh. And now let me stress, he didn't say, oh, like, oh, it's one of my best friends. He's on Let's Make a Deal with me, my buddy Jonathan. He's been around brothers a lot, but so it wasn't like, oh, I can't. He said, oh, I shouldn't, can I? Is that okay if I? So with that name, was there ever the word that you were forcing an audience away?
No, because to be honest, I didn't even think I'd be here. Early on with that title, me being a history buff and studying a lot of works of revolutionaries and writers and literary artists of the 60s and 70s, that word was used at that time. And this is a play about distilling stereotypes and tropes and labels. And it was a time when we was labeled colored. So I know that using the word color causes a visceral response when you see it. You can't ignore it. So there was a time when our bathrooms were labeled, our restaurants were labeled. So just like this play, you can't avoid seeing colored when you walk in, which was done by Robert Brill, our set designer. He wanted it to be ever present. And that's what I wanted it to be in the title as well. So when you saw it, you had some type of response. Now, depending on what your walk of life is, you might feel differently when you see the word colored, but really it was a double meaning for me to be able to show the labeling and what that word historically means, as well as paying homage to all the works of the revolutionaries I've studied during that time when that word was prevalently used.
See, that's what an education sounds like.
He's so well educated. So articulate. He's so articulate.
Okay, so we're going to open the floor
Yes, please,
to all of
please.
our gentlemen. So some of you, Broadway vets, some of you, this is your debut. Tell me what this experience, we come out of a, well, not come out, we're in a pandemic, but art is managed to return, art and commerce. We open this thing. What does this moment in time feel like for you in this show, on this street, doing this? Let's start here.
Oh, wow. Well, I would say first, Wayne, that to come out of a pandemic, literally 18 months of being completely shut down. I live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where I'm among the Amish, so I am naturally isolated and quarantined. So, it's a fact. It's a fact. So coming into the city again, just returning to work, 80 million people, 48 hours a week, really was a big transition coming back in. But at the same time, I think that everybody tried to make sure that we were completely safe, that we were making it safe for audiences to return as well. And so the moment that preview that you saw, the moment we got strapped in for me with a live audience, what Steve Broadneck, our director, calls the eighth character, I felt like we were on an electrifying ride. So it's just been really incredible for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I actually was here in New York during the whole pandemic. So I was stuck in my little one-bedroom apartment. There hadn't been any work for a long time, and we weren't sure if any work was going to come back, let it be Broadway or regional theater. And I hadn't been on stage in a very long time. So when I got this call, it was beyond anything I'd ever dreamed of. I got to the point where I was asking myself, could I still do this? It had been so long. But the beautiful thing for me is that I've been doing theater for a very long time, 20-something years. I was trained in mostly classical, mostly Shakespeare, a lot of the Western theater, which I love. Something like this was never even really available to us. So whether this had been on Broadway, or if it had been off Broadway, if it had been in some regional theater, I still would have been just a treasure to me. And what happened to us in that room, with these brothers coming together, with the love, with Keenan and with Steve, again, it was something I'd never experienced before. We don't normally get to tell these stories, right?
Ever.
Yeah, I'm 48 years old, and to be able to be in a room full of brothers and tell our stories was something that was so new. It was fascinating that it was new. How have I been black all my life and haven't been able to tell these stories till now? It was... So we have established in this group of people, I think I was telling you last night that the most I feel alive right now during this process is when I'm up here on stage with y'all every night. I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing, but it is what it is. It's the truth. So I'm gonna ride this. I'm gonna ride it until the wheels fall off.
Amen.
All right. Amen. I do think that there's another place for stories like this to be told, not only on Broadway, but everywhere. And I'm going to be a proponent for that.
Amen.
And it's got nothing to do with any other stories. I like to tell those too, but finally, we get to tell ours. And it's a feeling it's difficult for me to articulate. I wish I was a playwright like this brother so I could put them words together. But as a professional, as a person, as a human being, as a black man, it's the most extraordinary thing I've been a part of since I've been doing this. So.
Yeah. Well, Wayne, COVID was a difficult time for us. But I was in LA swimming butt naked in the pool.
That's one way to do it.
I just was. I'm a brother from Baltimore whose mama was a pastor, whose daddy was a drug dealer and a crackhead. I was in LA butt naked in a pool. And I was enjoying life. I really was. Sometimes, and we don't talk about this often enough, but as performers, oftentimes it's hard for us to live in the present, even though that's our work, because we're constantly being pushed to what's next, what you're working on, what you're doing next. And it feels like a hamster wheel. And you add that to the energy of New York City, and I was like, I got to get out, Lord, I got to get out. And I did. And then I got a call about this show. And I'm spiritual like Keenan, and I'm trying to tell you, I can't even describe the words of the feeling that came over me when I got the call. People don't know this, but Keenan and I met about 5 years ago at an ugly sweater party in Harlem. And this brother walked up to me and was like, yo, you don't know me, but I know you, and we gonna work together one day. I'm gonna write something, and you gonna be in it. And I just thought he was cool because his wife is from Baltimore like me, so we was, lit and having fun. And when this came along, and then I finally read it, I was blown away. My brother wrote this beautiful line at the end of the show that says, all we ever wanted was to be ourselves. And in all the work that I don't even know if I would have been able to do this show a couple years ago, but in all the work that I've done up until this point, I feel like I've fragmented myself. I feel like my existence as a black man in this country has been fragmented. I feel like there's a part of me that needs to exist in the church space. I feel like there's a part of me that needs to exist in the education space. There's a part of me that knows how to talk to producers and knows how to talk to the business people. And then there's a part of me that knows how to talk to my people. And there's a part, so it's like this fragmented version of myself. And something happened during COVID where I was like, nah, I ain't doing it no more. I'm going to be my fully integrated self. And you gonna get it or you not. And Keenan then presented this piece that I already had it written. And I was like, yeah, you can't tell me God ain't real. I'm gonna do this. And it's been a blessing, y'all. Like, honestly, I think me and my brothers talk about it all the time. The rehearsal process, which was very short, by the way, our rehearsal process was such a blessing that I could have been done after that. Like, I'm glad that y'all are here, but so glad that y'all are here. But the rehearsal process, we like Stephen Broadnax said on day one, we're going to decenter whiteness, and we're going to decenter a colonial and a Western approach to our work. And we saged the room, or Palo Santo'd the room every morning, and we were able to, as black men, stand in a circle and do a check-in, where we were able to not leave your life at the door. That's that thing, right? Show up to work, shut up, do what you're called to do, be quiet, leave your life at the door. They were like, Come in here and be fully present. Where are you, brother? And we will hold space for you. And I've never had a process or an experience on stage, in screen, that has been so vulnerable. And to think that I had the most vulnerable process I've ever had with 7 brothers, we got to debunk some of these lies. That black men aren't emotional and that we don't open up. It's a lie. The most vulnerable experience I've ever had is with these brothers on stage. They are family for life. For life.
Yeah. I echo all of that. This experience, Wayne, you said something that struck me, this idea of us not being a monolith, and the fact that we need to understand and embrace that as well, that we're not a monolith, because I think that we were all outside when the infection came down. And so we've all been infected with these ideas that white supremacy and patriarchy have taught us. And so this process, working on this piece, has been really confronting. It's been confronting for me as an individual to deal with some of that stuff. And like Brian said, decentering whiteness and the ways in which we operate and the ways in which we're not fully integrated and how we show up, it's been transformative. It's been revolutionary. The fact that it is transformative and perhaps revolutionary for Broadway is just a byproduct of the fact that it's been transformative and confronting and revolutionary for us. So what's happening every night when you walk in, the thing that you feel when you experience the show, I tell people all the time, when they say, I'm gonna come see your show, it's like, you're not coming to see the show. You're coming to experience the show. Yeah. Because it's not about seeing something. We're actually living an experience. Actually, what we're doing every night is we're getting in a circle and we're checking in. Yep. And that's what this piece is, that's what this process is. We just happen to be reciting this poetry, but it's sort of I like to think of it as a ritual. And every night it hits me a little bit differently. Some nights it catches me off guard and I'm like, oh shit, that just unlocked something really emotional for me. It's also a celebration of our ancestors. And I think it is not just a celebration, but it's us in honor of our ancestors. I think every night that we take our bows about the history of American theater. I think about the history of black people in American theater and blackface and minstrel shows. The fact that popular culture has been built on the backs of minstrelsy. The popular culture has been built on the back of minstrelsy.
It's crazy.
Let's just be clear, that's a fact. And what we're doing up here is so beyond that. It's actually us getting in a circle and checking in and saying, we're not that thing that you want us to be. This is actually who we are. This is who we get to be, and we get to reclaim our time. I'm reclaiming my time.
Facts. Facts.
Man, this being my first time on a Broadway stage.
Woo! Killing.
You know, I think it's weird. And, you know, me and Luke, we talk about it often. You know, I think this is a weird, charmed experience. You know, we hear so many crazy stories about the things that a lot of people have gone through, doing some great plays, some regional plays, et cetera, et cetera. But to come here and to just to be confronted with so much love, so much honesty, so much vulnerability, just an opportunity to just be, to just live. I think that was one of the biggest things that Steve made sure of. And he kept on saying, I don't want y'all acting on that stage. I don't want y'all acting. As soon as I see you acting, I'm pulling you off the stage, because that's not what we're doing on that stage. I need you to be. I don't need you to fake it. We're not faking the funk up here. We're not playing no games. I need you to be. If you're not on that stage being, you can get off the stage. So to be able to come here and to just be true, authentic, wherever you are that day, but just to be true and authentic, man. If this is what Broadway is gonna be like, I'll do this forever.
Wow. Darling, hook me up.
I second everybody. It has been therapeutic.
Yeah.
It has been transcending. It has been transformative. It has been challenging. I stepped into this thing honest as hell because I like to think of myself as such. And so I could, on Zoom, while filming, I spoke to Keenan and Steven, and I got to be honest, man. I perform, and I don't know what you think of me, you know, what you heard about me, but I'm scared to come up here and do this. So I want you to know that. And they were just like brothers, just like, okay, that's cool. It's gonna be all right. We'll push through that. And they've taught me how to channel that. All of these brothers have taught me how to channel that and even dig deeper and go higher within myself. This play is not something we could just come here and collect a check. This is something that is celebrating the men in our lives, the men right before us, ourselves, who we may be, you know, who we want to be. And it's very important that we come up here and, yes, use the tools of acting that we've learned along the way, but use the other tools that we don't ever get a real chance to use, being ourselves thoroughly every night, who we are. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this experience. And yeah, it's my first time too. It's a debut. Yeah.
Broadway debut, raise your hand.
I'm raised both of them.
If this is your Broadway debut, raise your hand so everybody can see. This is so Steve. And what an experience to make your debut with, because you know to get to echo you. What's funny in watching this is I don't know how many of you are in the business, but the joke is, you know, when there's a call, depending on the show, there's either a show where there's one brother and a sister. Maybe the cast you may be cast as a swing if you're black because you could please other things. But normally you don't get to be, and I'm jealous of you all because to be in a room and listening to your rehearsal process and the energetic bond and the storytelling you get to do, unless it's Five Guys Named Mo, Dreamgirls, The Wiz, or two handfuls of shows that are labeled as, oh, this is Black Broadway. You don't get a chance to be in a room full of these other men and learn from these other men and do this with, and that's an amazing thing to just listen to that experience.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
I think, unfortunately, I was listening to a podcast last night, and I'm really interested in that, just like men collectively being together and sharing space. Our culture, not just Broadway, our culture hasn't created a lot of spaces for black men to coexist together and share and be vulnerable and do things together in that way. So it's like, it's even beyond the theater, Wayne. It's like just in life, I've never been in an experience like this before.
Never.
What I love about you saying that, and that shoehorns into another thought, is what I love is the character, the scene in the barbershop when when all of a sudden, just like in a lot of barbershops in this country, a brother speaks his truth and happens to be gay, and the record, and everyone just looks. That scene was so powerful to me because that ties in to what you're saying, Delon, is that those spaces, to me, and I want to hear what you guys think about it, haven't existed because of those things that we've laid on our culture. You can't have a bunch of brothers be together unless you're on a team, or unless you're doing something, and then it's okay to show emotion because I'm winning. But to truly say that you love each other or that you're feeling these emotions, you're not allowed to because then you're soft, then you're gay, then you're the F word.
Right.
So I want to know two things in writing that scene. What was the impetus to put that scene in? And then tell me how it felt to play it. And then the responses for everyone else in the scene talking to the gay person in the room.
That scene came about in a lot of ways, and I can't take all the credit because I've worked with phenomenal artists like you see on stage and in the past. And the character of Happiness is like a conglomerate of friends of mine. And I wanted to be, that was probably the hardest character to write because it's the complete opposite of myself. So I wanted to make sure I got that character right, just like any character I write. And I wanted that character to be authentic as well. So I had friends, and I lean into my creatives, I lean into my actors to be able to get it right. And I'm not scared to lean in and say, hey, is this right? How does it feel? You know, is this accurate? You know, to not play a caricature of the gay man. You know, that I didn't want.
We didn't see that.
Right.
We didn't see that.
And for me, usually when you see gay characters, it's all about their sexuality. So I wanted to create a gay black man that just happened to be gay. And it's not like he wore it on his sleeve. It's not like he was forward with it or whatever the case may be. Like that's who he is, but that's not what the character is as a whole. He is just as complex as the rest. So it started off as a scene. Actually, it was like a couple of different scenes that I put together because it was a lot of different things I was trying to tackle in that scene, as well as sexual identity in that one part, as well as gentrification. So before, when I was creating the scene, it was different scenes. And through development, I knew that I wanted all the men to converge in one place. And where would that happen? I really avoided putting it in the barbershop because of that stereotype. You know what I mean? But once I thought about it, like you said, it wasn't a sports team. These guys, they not street guys. You know, they're not gangsters. So what other, you know, like we've been saying, what other shared space do black men have? So I couldn't avoid putting it in the barbershop. And for me, I've been in all different types of barbershops. You know, from the projects in Queens, I've been in barbershops where guns got pulled out on people, to where I've been in barbershops where it was Christian owned. You won't hear a single curse word. There'll be a library for books for the kids to read while they're waiting for their haircuts with their mothers. So I've seen the spectrum of barbershops. And if you haven't been to a black barbershop, you don't know that spectrum exists. And that's what I wanted to create. So I wanted to put a little bit of all those barbershop DNAs in this one scene to where, yeah, you got some guys that are loose lip, they watching sports, but you got the OG saying, hey, well, you know, watch your curse. I wanted a little bit of all of that in there. So really, I just wanted it to be a microcosm of our experience and what we know to be true on a daily basis. And I wanted to hopefully capture that on stage the best way I could.
And you did. Mm-hmm. And you definitely did. It was, you know, we went in that day. This show is one of those shows where it's like, you think you know what it is, and then you start working on it, and stuff just start bubbling up. And we all went through it that day. When we got to the barbershop scene, what I love about this room and these brothers is that there is no ego, and that's a tricky thing, especially in a room full of black men. There was no ego. So we all came in super vulnerable. And I was like, y'all, first of all, this is funny as hell. This is funny. But it's also terrifying and scary. I'll speak to myself personally, Wayne. You know, for me, I am privy to a lot of conversations because I don't present in the typical way in real life, in a way that someone would look at me and be like, oh, he's gay, or anything like that, right? So it's tricky because even when you ask about sexuality, for me, you're not asking about my masculinity or my femininity. You're not asking me about my gender. You're asking me about what I like to do in the privacy of my own home. Exactly. And I don't walk up to you and ask you what you like to do in your bedroom. So it's a tricky position because I'm black, but black. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I love black culture and I love my brothers, but what's tricky is sometimes in those spaces, especially when you're younger, you're almost like drilled into silence because especially in a room full of a bunch of brothers, whether you're in the fully Christian barbershop or you in the hood barbershop, what are you going to say? You're quite literally outnumbered, right? And so I was trying to dig in that room to unearth what the reality of that is. And what I love about my brothers is they were not afraid to ask real questions like, so you feel like in 2021, like you wouldn't just stand up and be like, yo, chill with that, like I'm gay. And I was like, absolutely not. Because unlike Happiness, who asked, maybe I should just leave and run away, I can fight. And I'm also an Aries and I don't mind confrontation. So basically what the question is are we gonna go there today? Or do you just decide to just kind of be silent and survive the moment? And if you don't mind me bringing this up, what I love is that the way God
You didn't
works.
already ask now. In front of all these people.
What if you could have been like, nah.
You got to talk.
Well,
what, DeLon?
He could have been like, no. But what was so beautiful is I was trying to do something as a person, but also as an actor. You know, when you watch things and you feel engaged, it's because the stakes have to be high. We have to raise the stakes. And for tons of men who are queer and who are black or just people of color, you don't understand the internal anxiety that happens sometimes in those situations. And what I love is I was trying to express it and trying to explain it, but the way God works, DeLon raised his hand.
The beauty of it is, so the thing is, we don't know what we don't know, right? And that's what's so beautiful about having a room full of black men where we can all be open and vulnerable and talk about things, because I think I identify as queer, and I think a lot of the straight men in the room just didn't understand that in 2021, we would still have that type of anxiety. I have been a queer advocate, an advocate for LGBTQ issues on one of the queerest shows in television history. I walk around wearing rainbows all the time. The day that we talked about the barbershop scene, I was going to the barbershop.
That day.
That day. And the whole day, and I couldn't go to my normal barber who has a salon. That's quiet, and I get my hair washed and all the stuff. But I had to go to one of these barbershops where the dude's gonna be doing the thing. And I was anxious about it because I hadn't been in one in a really long time. And so as Brian was explaining, I was like, well, I'm going to the barbershop today, and I've been feeling this thing all damn day.
It's real. I mean, we went up in there strong. It was me and one of our really close friends, and we walked up in there like,
He's like, I'm going to the barbershop.
I was like, I'm going to the barbershop with you. But it's one of those things where, you know, it's interesting because it's the dichotomy of experience, right? Because in some ways we talk about how do we show love and and what does that behavior look like amongst black men, right? And so a lot of what looks like our just colloquial ways of connecting are actually the way brothers show love. So some of that sports, some of that talking about girls, some of that, all of that is a way. Steve actually talked about this.
Male bonding.
Male bonding. It's a form of male bonding. And so there's something beautiful about it until that shit get a little toxic. And so we just have to kind of, and this is what I think is important too. I've been talking about this earlier today. We have to make sure, and this is the business that we work in, that as we create these characters and as we present to the world slices of life into our culture, that we're responsible to the next generation as well. I talked to a brother this morning that said, my mom kept me out of the streets, and so all I watched was A Different World and Cosby Show. That's all I watched, and that's why I knew as a black man I could be a doctor. And I think about the fact that a lot of these men that you see that Keenan has written and that we're getting to embody, a lot of the complexity and truth of who we are has not been seen. I know for me, when I was younger, I was like, I don't know where I fit in the community because I don't see myself. I don't see myself. I'm not voguing and shablamming and I'm not wearing wigs, so that ain't it. I ain't quite on the low and fully thugging like that one, so that ain't it either. So where am I? Right? And we don't get to see ourselves. And that's why I'm so thankful for my brother for writing a fully realized character.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and thank you for that. And to add to, the moment they speaking about, also in the room, and I don't think he's not here, Da Vinci, I don't think he'll mind me sharing, but also a part of that moment, which was beautiful to me, was this disposition when you're not white and male, you're not the standard. And a lot of times when you're not that, when you're outside of that, people feel like they can't relate to it. Like, oh, I'm not a black man. I can't relate, or I'm not gay. I can't relate. And in that moment, when DeLon talked about his experience and the angst he was feeling that day and going to the barbershop and how uncomfortable he felt in that space, Da Vinci said, yo, I can relate to that. And him being a heterosexual man, it had nothing to do with, oh, I can't relate to that feeling because I'm not gay. It was, I can relate to that because I felt uncomfortable. Him being a Haitian American, and he talks about that. English not being his first language, and growing up, I believe originally from Flatbush, how uncomfortable he felt around other black men, because culturally it was different, because in his house, he was raised, Haitian. So in that moment, that same exact day we're talking about, it was powerful for me to see him, and Da Vinci, as we all know, is so honest and truthful.
Yep.
We love him for that. He's the baby of the cast. He's the youngest of all of us. But in that moment saying, hey, I can relate to that. And now I understand it, because I believe Da Vinci was the one who asked, in 2021, do y'all still feel like that? So in that moment, to see that connection between these two brothers was amazing. And we had hundreds of those moments in the room to be able to relate to each other regardless. We're all from different backgrounds, all from socio-economical backgrounds. We're from different cities and states and things of that nature, but finding the nuance in our experience and be able to bring that to the stage. That's why I said I only can go but so far as a writer. I have no ego when it comes to that. It's only going to be but so good on a page. I need brilliant actors like you see right now to help find those details, to find that nuance, to really tailor the characters and be able to truly capture that complexity in an authentic way.
Well, that scene worked. I mean, that's one of the scenes that hit me hard, because in looking at the brothers in that space, it's, if you're an other, which I love what you said about if you're not white or perceived, well, that is the baseline for so many things. So if you're not that, then you're an other. And one of the things that we do to each other, which you addressed without saying it, was when you other another other. So when you tell someone who identifies as queer, well, you're not black enough because you're not a man.
Right.
I'm what is a man, and or when we tell each other, well, you're not black enough, or you're not this enough, whatever it is.
You can't play sports.
You can't do that. You can't dance. You can't. Well, why are you buying into the stereotype? Just because. That makes no sense. So the fact that you attacked that was one of the most heartfelt pieces.
Thank you.
The whole thing was just incredible. So going down the line, and then I think we're at a point where, if you don't mind, I'd like to open up the floor for some questions. I don't know if that's what the American Theater Wing had in mind, but they gave me the microphone, so that's what's gonna happen. So going down the line, if you weren't playing the emotion or the personification that you were, what's another one that you feel that you would slip into that space? So if you weren't happy, no, you're not happy, I'm sorry.
I'm happy.
If you weren't depression, right, you are not happy.
You said I am happy.
So if you weren't depression, who would you identify?
When I originally got the script and I read the first 25 pages and reached out to Keenan immediately to say that I wanted to be a part of it, I really thought they wanted me for wisdom. Because I just think I'm smart or some shit. I don't know. But needless to say, I gotta be honest. They wanted me for depression and it hits closer to home. There you have it.
That's how smart you are.
Oh, man. Yeah, you know what? Actually, man, believe it or not, I believe that the one that I would most identify with would be depression. Especially having been an actor for so very long, and always understanding that there was a very limited amount of roles that were available to me just simply because of what I am aesthetically, physically, and racially. So I always found myself doing a number of different things that were not on the stage, even though I knew I belonged there. I knew I could bring it, I knew I had the chops, I knew I was trained to do it, but you could find me on the street playing my saxophone, you know, paying the rent, doing those types of things. So I've been in that space where I've been, you know, I know that I can be doing something else, but I need to be doing this right now, so I'm gonna continue to do it. So yeah, depression, I guess I hadn't even thought about that. It's a good question.
Wow. Yeah, happiness, who I play. No, it's so funny. I really believe that line that you wrote, that happiness is a choice. I've been saying it for the last couple of years, that I'm choosing joy. I got it tattooed on me. It says choose joy. But I think had I not been choosing joy, I would clearly be depressed. I think sometimes happiness is the other side of the same coin. It's about the choices that you make. And I think that where we meet happiness, especially since we raised the stakes on the death of his father, he lost his superhero 6 months ago. He's still grieving. And I believe that if the show continued to go, we would see all the phases of that grieving. And in 6 months, part of my mother lost her husband and my stepfather, who I loved. And there is a world in the lifespan of the grief process where joy does kind of reignite and step forward for a little bit, but it's also a little bit of denial sometimes. And I think that where we find happiness, it's very easy, if he did not have certain things in place, for him to appear and be experiencing deep depression. So I think that that's who I feel the closest to as well.
You know, when they came to me with this, I was really, and the role that they offered me was love. I was really excited about unpacking that as a concept. Love is something that I've been really invested in unpacking and interested in understanding for myself for a really long time. Some of my favorite books are books about the theory of love. And so I was really excited to sort of unpack, what does love personified look like? And I think too, while the character's name is Love, I do think that he lives in a state of depression for a lot of this play. There's a lot of melancholy and heaviness around him until he has sort of a cathartic release with the universe. Yeah, so I'm really grateful that I get to share that with audiences and spread a little bit of love with people that come in here every night and share that realization that love is really about an inner journey and going deeper. So I'm really grateful for that. I thought when I got the script that I was surprised that they did not ask me to play happiness. I was like, they gonna give me the gay role.
You was in Pose. You did the Pose. You're gonna play happiness.
This is like, I'm an actor. And so and I do love the character of Happiness, but I was like, no, I don't want to play the gay role. I want to dive into something else. Yeah.
Anger. It's a box that I feel black men are constantly put in. I think anger is just like Delon. There was something about anger that I wanted to really kind of tap more into, because when we say somebody's angry, a lot of times, the first thought in your head is the overt, fury, like screaming, yelling. But a lot of people are angry on the inside. It's a fire that burns that you don't necessarily see all of the time. So I was very interested to play that. But originally, when I first got the script and I read it, it was between these two guys. It was between love or passion that I was thinking about. Love felt, I wanted to play love. It just felt good at the moment. And then passion has a story that's very, very similar to what I was actually going through at the time. Just like passion, I just had a daughter. I'm married, and thank you guys, thank you. And prior to our daughter Tristan, we lost our first child. Tristan, our daughter, is a rainbow baby. So just reading the script and seeing that feeling, like I know that, like it's visceral reading it. There was one time during rehearsal I had to pull Luke to the side. I'm like, bro, I'm not gonna lie. It's fucking me up, you reading that over and over again. I had that conversation with God way too many times, so trust me, man, thank you. And thank you, Keenan, but yeah, that's real.
Yeah, I don't know. I identify with everybody. When I read it, less wisdom because I'm still figuring. No, I'm still figuring out things. But some who know me may say I think I'm a know-it-all. So I don't know.
Don't let him fool you. He's a very, very wise man.
Very wise.
Thank you, man. I resonated with depression a lot. But I like to think that passion is a culmination of everybody in a sense because of what he's going through, how to love, being depressed, thinking about the past and trying to push through and be a better man to his husband, to his wife, being there. And I think that's a thing that he just carries with himself. And for me, it all just resonated with me. I don't know. When I first got the thing, I was like, when they first said passion, they wanted me to go for passion. And I'm just before reading it, I was just like wondering, what is this passion? I'm a singer. Everyone thinks Luke James is this.
Oh my God, Luke James.
I know I'm not tripping because when I mentioned it to people, and I tell them all the different names of the characters, and I said, they were like, who are you playing? I would say Passion. They're like, yup, Passion. Woo, Passion, right? And when I read the script, when I really sat down and really digested the script, I cried, and I text Keenan. I couldn't help but just tears just fall every time I'm reading this because I know everybody. I've lived some of it, and it just, I understood what this was, what this means for black men to come and see themselves, see people that they look up to, the old man down the street, to kind of hear his story, kind of feel these things out. And it was crazy because there's so much more to the story that we left off the table, what you're seeing.
I'm about to say, listen, there's so many fly poems.
There's so much more to the characters, but we can only give you so much.
Yeah.
That's part. I'm mad.
Wait for the series, y'all.
But I'm just grateful to be a part of this we all have our lives and we're artists, so we're sensitive about everything.
Talk about it.
And we feel everything, and so it is intense to live this life as a black man in this world and feel everything, and then have to find a way to channel it, to be an artist and be a vessel. And I understood that we're being vessels for our own little kid in ourselves to be more than maybe we didn't get a chance. And that's what's so therapeutic about this, and that's what's so gratifying about just the rehearsal itself. Yes, I'm grateful y'all get to see this, but I received everything in rehearsal because I'm different now. I was different then. I wasn't exactly happy. I wasn't exactly content with my life and smelling my own roses and just dealing with things that I've put away. I wasn't dealing with nothing, you know, just moving forward and working. But this made us deal with our things. I recall seeing this brother tear up in the funny moments, but having to take a moment to collect himself. And I felt that. I fully understood that, and that gave me permission to be present, to let it out. And whatever happens on day to day, have no pressure but in being yourself. It's okay. Yeah. And at the end, we just hug each other, and that's that. And this is the most hugs and crying I've ever done around.
True.
I think it's so beautiful watching you guys. You know, I'm a big sci-fi nerd, and one of the thoughts I had when I was watching the show was what you did, showing every single facet. It truly is like a quantum story where you show that one decision leads to an angry brother. One decision leads to a brother that makes a decision born out of love, or this, and then to watch our whole thing happen at the same time in a multiverse that you created, which is astounding. So let's take a couple questions before we go. Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
This isn't gonna work if I do this.
Oh, I can shout.
There we go.
So my sister and I really enjoyed all of your performances, and I know you've touched on it a bit, but I was curious about how you guys step out of this every night. Like, what's your process to kind of breathe again, and also if it's affected how you relate to other men in your life.
Good question.
Well, you know, I mean, for me, because this play, what he wrote, is something I'm less actor and more myself in it. Night after night has been therapeutic. There's a release.
Yeah.
There's a release every night we get to have. Once, to be
for yourself.
To be very honest, I mean, once I let go of the ideas of, you know, does the audience feel it or whatever, once I let go of that, I can be okay once I put the baby down and breathe, and because I am crying, but I need to cry. I don't cry, so I feel lifted every night, and we hang out every night. So it's it's a different thing.
I'm gonna be honest with you. You know, studying as an actor, like Yale School of Drama, and blah blah blah. Like it's like we have all these processes as actors that are really individual about how we deal with whatever the material is that we're tackling. So we have quite literally like skills in place. Don't none of that work for this. When I say none of it, my sister, none of it. Like, because so much, we've been sitting with this for so long, and we do it 8 times a week, but there are moments that will catch you off guard. There was a day a couple weeks ago, and right before he went on for Black Boy, the last piece, right after Depressing is shot, he goes, man, this shit is triggering, man. It just pisses me off. And then the shots happened, and he stepped out. And all of a sudden, I realized that's how my cousin died. Literally like that. That's how my cousin died. And I walked backstage, and we finished the show, and I found myself curled up in a corner in the stage manager's office, weeping, like ugly cry. And they held space for me. They just held me. They just had me. Our stage managers are great. They were there. Our assistant director, Deb, she was super present.
Mother.
She's been a powerful, nurturing force for this. Just yesterday, he has this moment. We're not on stage. He's talking to Anger, and he talks about how his first encounter with the police, he was young, and it was mistaken identity. That was my first encounter with the police at 12. Walking home from middle school, like I guess that's middle school, right? 6th grade, 7th grade. Walking home, book bag bigger than me, slammed on the ground by 2 cops who were, not in uniform. Guns pulled out, book bag opened up, and then they drove off laughing, saying that I fit a description of someone who robbed a gun store in my neighborhood. At that time, I was living in the burbs. There was no gun store in my neighborhood. They were effing with me. So, what happens is every now and then, it sneaks up on you. You just aren't even aware that the stories that he's written are so real, and they're also universal to the black male experience in some ways. And so, to be honest, I don't know. I do not know how we deal with it. There's a lot of love, and there's a lot of holding space for each other. So that's what's been helpful.
To cut you off, I want to take one more question because I know that you guys have got 2 shows tomorrow. Sure. I think, so. Yes, ma'am.
It's funded, Broadway's expensive, were these your first choices? And talk about when they received the script, did you know who you wanted to play these roles? And talk about their producers and how it went.
There's really no short way to answer that. This has definitely been a journey, and it takes years to get to Broadway.
I was the first. I'm joking. I know I wasn't. I know it wasn't.
All these. Yeah, it takes a process. It started with myself and our lead producer, Brian Moreland, about 5 years ago. It started with us setting forth a plan and pretty much knocking on every door in New York. And we did that for several years. Of course, producer's job is to raise money, to bring money to the table. There's many different ways they do that, but we have an extraordinary producer team in Brian Moreland, Ron Simons, Diana Demena, Candy Burris, Samara Wiley, and Cheryl Lee Ralph, and a host of co-producers. So they've really been working hard and doing their thing. As far as the process, these guys are superstars. They're all in films, they're on TV shows, and really it just comes down to scheduling and who wanted to sign up to be a part of an ensemble. It's very hard to get guys of these calibers sometimes because there isn't a traditional starring role in this show, but all of these guys were meant to be in this role, these roles because they had no egos and they knew the assignment and they knew that they was going to be a part of this super team and be a part of this ensemble to really deliver this message, and like they all understand, to be vessels going forward to tell this story.
This is the last question right there.
You got it, brother. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Wow.
Hey.
Wow.
Thank you, really.
Thank you. All right, everyone. So that is that's a wrap on that. Thank you so much for staying. Thank you for listening to this. We can listen to y'all for hours. You guys be safe.
Oh, yeah.
Joy? Picture real quick. Joy!